Was it just for me, Karthika, or was Blair's video freezing once in a while?
Initially it was. Now it's okay, I think.
Yeah, I know. But is that because we're on a preview mode, or whether we are now live, right?
We're live now.
Okay, technically we are live. Okay, so we should see. We're on a preview mode, or whether we are now live, right?
We're live now. I was just checking to see if we were live.
I was wondering why I was being I was echoing without me speaking.
I was just checking. I'm going to mute myself.
Okay, thank you.
No problem, Blair. We want everybody to be well hydrated.
Yeah, I was just realizing I was getting very thirsty. It's taking me an hour to get a drink otherwise.
Yes, that's a good plan. We have about 2 minutes prior to officially going live, so I will let you sort of get yourself sorted out. Your video seemed to be freezing here and there, and I was just wondering why that may be.
It could be just the room that I'm in. I'm next. I could change the location if it's a problem.
The camera just seems to be freezing. It may be a bandwidth issue, maybe, or not. But let's see. Once, don't worry about it.
It's not happening for me.
It's not happening to you. Okay, maybe. All right. Okay. All right. Let's not worry about things that we don't have. Okay,
So you guys getting a lot more viewers and stuff now because you're updating all your technology?
Yeah. I mean, sometimes we get a couple of thousand watching us live. Sometimes 300-400 on average, right? So it varies on the subject. So sometimes we get thousands watching us. Sometimes, but what invariably happens is when the benefit of this technology is that we can actually schedule these at various global time slots. So that ends up becoming sort of a great way to get additional views. So most of our videos get about 10,000 views in about a week.
No, that's really good. Who has been your biggest draw so far?
So we have a couple of mini series, Blair. So we have like one on marketing in a pandemic. Then we have this, which is a pandemic diet. The sales and marketing one has the record. But we had a pandemic heroes one, which was a interview with a medical personnel, and that got 3,000. So it just
Yeah, interesting. That's good. It's good growth to be able to get that many.
Yeah. I mean, given that we only started in April, it's not bad at all.
It's excellent.
And as of next week, we're going live on TV as well. So.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So we'll be multiple digital plus. I guess analog or now digital video. Yeah. So.
Yeah.
Okay, I think we're right at the 8:30 time. So let's officially start.
Okay.
All right. Good evening, good morning, good afternoon, wherever you are in the world today. Thank you again for joining us for another version of Pandemic Punditry's Putting the Planet on a Pandemic Diet. We are excited to actually have with us as our guest today, the president of Top Tier Foods. He's joining us from Vancouver, Canada, early morning for him. And he's done a lot of amazing things with plant-based foods. In particular, we are talking to him today about a number of things, but particular Wagyu beef, which he was the first to market in the world with a product that imitates the famous Kobe beef. So very interested to kind of learn a little bit more about what Blair Bullus has done in this space. And so welcome to Pandemic Punditry, Blair.
Hey, thank you very much for having me. I appreciate it. I've been watching you guys, so this is exciting to be on and talk to you about everything that we're doing. So thank you very much for staying up late.
No problem.
I'm happy to get up early to talk to you.
Yeah, exactly. So it's amazing that we have now guests coming from all over the world, and it's always a pleasure to talk to people like yourselves who are doing some incredible things. So just for the benefit, of our audience, I know that you made global headlines with this new product. What is the really overall mission of Top Tier Foods? Lots of people are doing all kinds of things. Printing 3D printed steaks. We had Ben on here earlier who talked about 3D printing steaks. Now you're doing something that is sort of the holy grail of beef, right? Which is Wagyu. Give us an idea. What was the inspiration behind you taking on Kobe beef, for example, or Wagyu?
Well, I mean, to go back, originally what Top Tier Foods was developed to do, and what I really wanted to do when I started the company, was just to make healthy food accessible to everyone. When we started out, it was about 2013, and when I was in university, the prepackaged food that you would get in a grocery section or in the frozen section was just full of carbohydrates, sugar, salt, and fats. And really, the focus was on the quantity. How much could you get for $1, rather than on the quality, what nutrition components were made up of, and there was no attention paid to the environmental impacts. Really, it was just about the value concept at that time was just how much you could get. So we wanted to rethink that a little bit and change the value concept. And so the value for us is in the nutrition components. It's in the quality of the ingredients. And when I started, we started using quinoa. In 2013, quinoa was very early stage. Nobody was using it. So we wanted to develop products that was using this new kind of novel concept ingredient. And that's what we started with. We started developing quinoa side dishes. And then we transitioned from quinoa side dishes into playing around with different types of quinoa. And so one of them that we used actually had the same starch structure that's in sushi rice, so like a sticky quinoa for sushi. And so that's how we ended up getting into kind of the sushi realm. And because through the sales of that and getting contacts and talking with master chefs and things like that, we started to look into the Japanese market a little bit more, because the Japanese market in particular is so traditional that they often will be very slow to react to some of the trends that are happening. And so especially when it comes to this health trend and the environmental trend, that's where we saw some opportunity. And so by this point, we'd actually got a great network of people around the world that we'd contacted through our sushi quinoa. So we started to work with these companies to develop a Wagyu beef alternative. And we picked Wagyu because Wagyu is the world's best tasting beef. And so we thought, okay, if we are able to replicate a beef type, we want to go with the absolute best type. And so we can work with these Japanese manufacturers that we know very well now to create something that was actually to the same texture, the same flavor as the world's greatest beef. And then we were able to bounce these concepts off of some of the best chefs in the world until the point where we had a prototype that was almost exactly the same as a Wagyu, as a piece of Wagyu beef, but made from plants. And so that's really how we get to this point. It was an evolution of trying to make products that had a different value concept, and we really internalized that to the point where now we have products that we're making that they're probably the best tasting meat alternative out there, but they have all these side benefits of being environmentally friendly. They're health conscious. They have they have production that is sustainable and economical. So yeah, I mean, that's how we got it. Little a roundabout way of saying how we got it.
So this quest to become, build the best tasting, meat or beef alternative company, so I mean, obviously the bar is really high when you take on Wagyu. I mean, if I remember from my days of eating Kobe long time ago, before I became vegan, it is all about the marbling, right, and the fat that's in the meat. How did you achieve that from a plant-based perspective? And what is your main ingredient? I mean, is it a pea-based or soy-based, or are you able to tell us what the ingredients are? The main ingredient?
Yeah, so the main ingredient is a textured soy. So we're using that as a vehicle. The reason why we picked soy is a lot to do with the production methods. We decided that for us to make this properly, we had to go to Japan. Japan has over 1,000 years of tradition of working with soy. They obviously know Wagyu beef more than anybody else as well. So to be authentic, to be traditional, we had to go to Japan to have this produced. Through the development process, we tapped into traditional elements of Japanese cooking, things that there's subtleties in the art of using soy that the Japanese know more than anyone. If you think about Japanese food, you think about how soy is used. They use it in tofu and bean curd as a textured product. So they know how to create new textures. They know how to pull various aspects out. So if we're looking to replicate that fatty texture, they know how to do that. If we're looking to replicate some of the bite, we know how to do that through traditional elements. Flavoring elements as well. We go through fermentation of soy. So obviously they use it in miso and they use it in soy sauce. We're able to tap into the fermentation elements to make sure that what we're eating, it actually has the same taste as what you'd expect from a Wagyu beef. So those traditional elements are sometimes what might be missed in other food companies. It allows us to be a little bit more clean label as well, because these are highly processed technologies. These are technologies that have actually been just passed down from thousands of years of working with soy. So I think that is actually where we're probably a little bit more advanced in terms of our use of soy. But it's funny because when we say advanced, we're actually just tapping into really old cooking techniques to make this product as close to a beef as possible.
So that's an amazing sort of, nothing like going to the source of the original and then building up the product from there. What has been the response from, I know that Chef Tojo, the Master Chef was couldn't distinguish between the real thing and the plant-based version. What's the general response being in countries like Japan and also the more savvy diners that you have in Canada, in Vancouver, who are well versed with sort of Japanese cuisine? What is the response being to your product right now from a customer perspective?
The response is fantastic. We never get a poor response to this. We do get people that are really trying to pick apart what the difference is between Wagyu and Wagyu beef, the Waygu and Wagyu beef. So there's going to be people that are really trying to rip it apart, and that's okay. We understand that there's going to be those people. But from a general perspective, this is a great product. It really hits on the points that you want when you're eating Wagyu beef, and it hits on the points that you want when you're just having a good meal in general. So what we're finding is people are really excited by it, and it meets those expectations. So that to us is really good. We get a lot of companies that bring in the product, and then they want to kind of trick their clientele, or maybe not trick, but like they want to do that tasting, that sampling as well, where they provide somebody a dish and they go, hey, try this Wagyu beef. And then they later tell them that it's actually not, it's made of plant. So it's kind of a fun thing right now. Everybody's interested. The response we get is extremely positive. We're really happy by that. There's a lot of kind of people that coming to us asking for this and then are pleasantly surprised.
Blair, I remember reading somewhere that you were sort of surprised, almost taken aback that you were even getting phone calls and inquiries from countries like Philippines and Dubai, and within like days of launching. How did that happen? Immediately we got a lot of attention, and I think a lot of it has to do with the fact that we're so successful in kind of making prototypes that we have the backing of some of the top chefs in North America. So for us, when we launched, we were able to launch with that kind of support, and it immediately got attention. We're also launching into a vacuum right now because there's just not that many people talking about restaurant industry products. So to have a positive storyline come out about a on-trend product, I think when we launched into a world where nobody else is really launching something. So we have this bit of runway to go where we're one of a few companies that are really trying to do something in the restaurant space during the pandemic, and for that we've happily been a little bit rewarded just through the media, talking to people like you. So yeah, that's been really good. But we wouldn't be getting that if the product wasn't as good as it was. And so for me, the response was over and above what I probably thought we were going to get. But I'm not overly surprised by it just because I know what we have as a product. So it's good.
So the beef itself, it's not going to be available direct to consumer, right? It's always going to go through restaurants. Is that correct? Or?
For the immediate sales for this product, we always want to go into restaurants. We want people to kind of try it at that high level restaurant quality first. We want a chef to use it, play with it, and showcase it. So that's kind of our goal with it. Similar to Wagyu beef, not that many people will take Wagyu beef and prepare it properly when they're at home. We want a restaurant to really showcase it in the best capacity possible. But secondary to that is what we also want to do is we want to incentivize manufacturers to take our product and then use it in their manufacturing and create retail products that they can sell. We have such a demand for this product right now. We have people calling us every day about where they can get it. We want to use that attention to go out and get some manufacturing started so that they can launch their own retail products. We don't have to stand in their way by, putting this out into retail. We want people to kind of start using this, showcasing it in unique ways. It can be used in so many ways. It can be used from everything from rice bowls to, putting it inside of bowls or putting it into different soups and sauces and things like that. So there's so many unique elements to it. We don't want to just give it, we don't want to just put it there for our clients to kind of just use in a stir fry. We want people to actually really think about what they're doing with it and then create some really unique products so we can have like a whole grouping of little satellite products that are going to be in retail with the Waygu brand on it.
So Blair, in terms of price point, right? So I mean, Vego is obviously very expensive, the real thing. Is there a competitive advantage here for you to be priced, maybe less than what people would pay for Wagyu beef, and therefore, give the Wagyu experience without the price tag? Then could that be a sort of a strategy as well?
I think so. I think a little bit of that is true. I mean, we want to give somebody the option of having a Wagyu experience without paying that price tag. But at the same time, we're not really competing against Wagyu beef directly. We think that we have two completely different clientele. We're going after vegetarians and vegans, and they're looking for the best meat experience that they can possibly get, meat alternative experience. Whereas the Wagyu clientele, the ones that are willing to pay $200 for a steak, they're kind of set in that they're willing to go and pay for that, and that's fine. There's a huge market for Wagyu beef, so we're not really competing against the two directly. We think that by separating and becoming the best meat alternative, that is more that provides us kind of a better channel. So we're mid to slightly higher range in terms of the meat alternative space, but we're not in the $200 a pound at all. We'll probably be much more similar to what a Beyond Meat or Impossible Foods would be.
So if I noticed that you said that the reason that you're using the restaurants primarily as a conduit to sort of establish the brand and the experience of eating this is that largely driven by the fact that it does require some kind of, I mean, is it harder to cook properly? I mean, does someone have to be a sort of a trained chef to actually do this product justice, or is it that you want to early days sort of manage the experience to be a very, very positive one?
Exactly. I mean, I think just for us, and this goes back to when we were launching Sushi Quinoa as well, we want to drive the customer experience a little bit, as much as we can anyway. We want to make sure that positive is as positive an experience as possible. So going through a restaurant where they're going to manage that as much as possible, I think is our kind of best way to showcase the product. It also will just help us in terms of, sushi and sushi related products. The North American market is so driven by the restaurant industry. So we don't see as many people cooking this style product at home as they would in a restaurant or go out to a country. So I think from us, the market demand is more catering to restaurants anyway. And so for us, as a startup, we have not unlimited resources to go and create products. So I think for us, it's better to do wholesale to manufacturers, to restaurants, and just keep those channels really well stocked, well serviced, and then allow those companies to make products and then co-brand with our branding and the Waygu brand to make those experiences in a retail setting, rather than us going and just putting the product out there for people to go and take.
Blair, speaking of branding, because you're going through the restaurant industry, if I'm, patronizing a particular restaurant, would I know that I'm eating the Kobe beef, plant-based Kobe beef alternative that has been provided by Top Tier Foods?
Yeah, we license our marketing material and our branding to any restaurant that's going to be using the product. So that is, we're very similar in the way that we want to market our product to what you'd see with a Beyond Meat or Impossible Foods. So I think our brand will hold some sort of value to the restaurant, and so it's not that they necessarily have to do this, but I think there's value in doing it. So we're happy to support each restaurant that goes ahead and does it.
That makes sense. So just so that people don't think that you're sort of you only focus on Wagyu beef. You've done this quinoa sushi or sushi quinoa product, which is sort of replacing sort of rice with quinoa rolls and nigis and all that. I think that was a fabulous sort of, I think must have been your initial entree. But you're also doing vegan fish roe products as well, right? The Tosago and caviar, I guess.
Caviar. Yeah. So I mean, those two products are kind of a co-partnership with us and a company in Denmark. So in North America, we sell these products, which are seaweed-based fish roe. And so for us, especially looking at the Japanese market, we use a lot of Masago and Tobiko in the market. And so for us, we have a product called Tosago, and Tosago is an alternative that we can use as a replacement for that product. And then we also have caviar, which is alternative fish roe. So if you're beluga caviar or salmon caviar, we're able to use a seaweed alternative for that. So that's a really exciting product. It's more niche than you would find with our Wagyu or our sushi quinoa, but it is equally as probably important for the social and economic, social and environmental side as our other products.
So is this sort of focus on Japanese food? Because are you a connoisseur and a lover of Japanese cuisine yourself, or is this obviously is it aligned with sort of, I guess you got into sushi quinoa and then you figured you were sort of in the market and then you started looking for, or is that the reason? I mean, you started looking for products that you can substitute or make alternatives for.
Yeah, I think it was a bit of a pivot after we did our Quinoa Cookies line. We switched and we started to do sushi quinoa. At that point, we only had quinoa products, and so the debate was, do you just stick with quinoa and be a grain company, or do you pivot and you do manufacturing into kind of another category altogether. And I think the opportunities that we saw in the Japanese space, especially when we kind of have aligned ourselves at the high end of the Japanese space, we aligned ourselves with some of the top chefs, some of the top distribution companies, some of the top manufacturing companies. So once we've had these connections, and we saw where the development was in terms of coming out of Japan for new products that were catering to the next generation of eaters. So for us, it's looking at what are the 14 to 25-year-olds doing right now, and so many of them are trending to plant-based. So many of them are trending to healthy alternatives, sustainable alternatives that we thought, but we're not seeing that development come out of Japan organically. So we know, because we have a North American presence, that this is where our consumers are, what they're looking for. So let's go out and see if we can partner with some of these Japanese manufacturers and Japanese companies to create products that are authentic, that are as delicious a product as you get out of Japan, but they have some of the focus that our kind of North American client is looking for. And once we've done that, we realized it wasn't just North America that was interested, it was actually the world that's interested. And so the interest that we're getting now is from Europe, it's from places in Dubai, it's Philippines and in North America as well.
So are there plans? So you're focused right on the North American market. You have interest from the rest of the world. So in terms of a geographic spread or market focus, where are you looking to mainly supply at this point?
So our start was in North America, and so this is kind of our major focus. We also have very good connections in Europe. So I think Europe will probably be a major focus of ours going forward. There are some technical branding and marketing issues that are slightly different when you go into the EU, labeling laws.
Right.
We won't be able to call it Waygu in Europe just because of its connotation to Wagyu beef. So the marketing will be slightly different when we go to Europe, but the product will be exactly the same. But yeah, the European, we're talking with German TV companies right now to do TV shows for the German audience because they're so interested in it. So I think the opportunity in Europe is just as big. In terms of the rest of the world, Asia, we have specific distributors that we're working with right now to kind of get the product going in various regions. So in Japan, in Taiwan, in the Philippines, we have different people that we're talking to. It'll be I think our singular focus for our company will be in producing the marketing and the manufacturing, and then getting the product out to as many of these interested distributors as we possibly can. We will support the sales and the marketing as we can from where we are.
So interestingly, Blair, I've never eaten red meat, right? And it's one of the things I posted about when we were promoting the event. So how would you convince someone like me to eat the plant-based alternative?
Well, that would be a really interesting question. I think it would come down to your personal preference. If this is something that you're really interested in and you've just never had it because beef is not considered something that you would eat normally, it would come down to personal preference. I wouldn't ever push it on anybody, but if this is a texture and a flavor that has been described to you and something that you would be interested in trying, for us, that is a really unique opportunity to give somebody their first kind of beef-like experience. That would be a really kind of cool thing to do, and hopefully it would live up to the expectations. I honestly have no idea what it would be like to be trying beef for the first time. I was raised eating beef, so it would be a very unique experience.
I think there are a couple of 100 million or even a few billion Indians who are probably a billion Indians who probably will be interested to find out. It's always an interesting challenge, though I think there's there are a lot more meat eaters in India than people say. But I think it's one of these things where if you were to take pork and alternatives and apply it to the Middle East, I think you'll have a similar challenge as well. But yeah, it's these regional traditional food prohibitions or cultural affinity for one particular kind of food to another. I think those will all play out very interestingly. I was just wondering. So you started in 2013, Top Tier Foods. Are you are you self-funded? Is there any sort of private money involved in addition to your sort of bootstrapped? Or I mean, what is the situation now? I mean,
No, it is a completely family-owned business.
Okay.
At this point, so we haven't gone outside to raise capital yet. However, due to kind of the demands on scaling, that will be in our future to raise some money. But at this exact moment, we're focused on getting product out the door. We've had so much response, we want to just put our heads down, focus on getting the product out the door, set up as many distribution partnerships as we possibly can, and then probably later in the year or very early in 2021, we'll start doing a fundraising round. But like at this point, we are just focused as much as we possibly can on getting the product out the door to satisfy the demand.
So Blair, what is your production process like, and how long is it?
So the production process, depending on, can take up to a couple of weeks, but that's a very big scale. So our scaling is very good. When we're talking our manufacturing partner, this is a very large scale manufacturer in Japan. So production capacity is very large. During the pandemic, there's some issues about going in and out of the facility and just on the shell size of how many people are actually working at any time. So Japan has kind of gone through fluctuations. So sometimes it's quite high, sometimes it's not too bad. From production, we will have a full scale rolling production that will be able to meet any of the demand that we possibly get.
So is the product frozen or chilled or ambient?
Same question.
Yeah, same question. Yeah, it's frozen. So it comes frozen. So we have a shelf life of about 540 days. So it's a great shelf life on it.
Wow.
And then you treat it just like you would meat. Once you unthaw it, then it's ready to go. For us, what we've done with this version, so it's a sukiyaki style cut. So when you're talking sukiyaki, it's a very thinly cut Japanese beef style. And this is the most common style of cut that you would get in Japanese for Wagyu. So for us, that is the easiest one to implement into restaurants. If you're thinking for what type, you'd be looking at like what kind of teriyaki beef you get with a bento box or in a rice bowl. It's a thinly cut beef that's kind of the most popular Japanese cut. It's also you talk to almost any Japanese chef, that would be their favorite way to eat Wagyu beef. And so it is, a lot of people think that thick steak, but that gives you almost too much of a good thing. It's too fatty. So you'll have a piece or two of that, and then you'll want to move on. And so for us, it's keeping that really thin, small cut. And that's kind of the product that we're launching. We're launching this, as widely as possible. But for us, it's expanding off of this texture, and then looking at what other options we can do in the future. And so some of those options, looking at if we can create larger piece sizes, steaks, things that we'll be able to sell as an ultra high-end alternative to an Angus beef steak or something like that. So those are the next steps in terms of our development.
Awesome, amazing. So if someone's, for the audience tuning in from North America, if they wanted to experience the beef, what are the restaurants that they could walk into?
Yeah, so we're just getting the product kind of rolling out. So we're launching into New York. We have product going into LA. We have product in North America, in Vancouver. We have restaurants. So we're just getting this going. We have some larger restaurant groups that we're very excited to be working with on some menu development right now. Like, it's almost slightly too early to be saying where and when that will be released, but that will be released slightly on a wider scale. So it's still very early days. When we launched this kind of publicly, we had already done some back-end sales kind of in January, February, and March, where we started talking to the largest sushi chains that have, you know, a year lead time in terms of getting new development out. So while that has progressed and that's getting to a point where we're kind of seeing the results, the independent restaurants and the launching through distributors, we only were able to kind of get that going in the last month once we launched publicly and we had all this interest. And so that is just coming online. The new restaurants will be able to start picking this up through distributors right away. But we're just kicking forward in terms of getting these onto menus, and you'll start seeing it on menus in New York, LA, and then in Europe will probably be November by the time we get product to Europe with our European branding and labeling, and then that will start going. As for Asia will probably be probably October, November. You'll start seeing product available for distribution.
So, so you have done the Wagyu. You said you were planning on expanding your product line to other things like an Angus beef steak. What about the other, the seaweed-based roe and all that? Is that also part of the repertoire that you're thinking of, or now you've sort of pivoted to only doing Wagyu?
I think the Wagyu has been so successful. It's taking more of our bandwidth than we may have anticipated. So for our new product development, I think what we will be focusing on is creating new Wagyu products and then working with manufacturers to create supporting products that will be using these. So I think, yes, you're probably right. I mean, I think we will continue to have these fish roll alternatives, sago and caviar available. We'll continue to push them if there's new development that we think will work. And sometimes these are just organic. Somebody asks for something, and you go, "Yeah, we think we can do that." Then we'll kind of play around with growth in that market. But for us right now, it is as much as possible focusing on the development for Wagyu and just meeting that demand. Continuously kind of rolling out new things as we go.
Blair, I remember earlier you mentioned you sort of want to also play it similar to How Impossible and Beyond, doing it with branding and all of that stuff. So from a vision perspective, are you planning like IPO? Is that sort of how you're thinking of taking the company, or?
I mean, it's a little far out for us. I mean, it would be great to eventually get to that point. I think for us, our focus is on a couple of things. One is just creating the world's best tasting meat alternative. And for us to be singularly focused on different aspects, we're still small, we're still making sure that we get the product development right. But for us to be known as the world's best tasting meat alternative, that's our focus. And if we can do that properly, if we can put the time and the effort into getting that focus done right, then options will open up. If we're recognized as one of the best, then anything is possible in terms of where we take the company. But our focus has to be very singular, getting the product to be as good as it possibly can be, getting it as widely distributed so as many people can try it as possible. I think right now that's our focus. We'll take funding on when we need to kind of expand, make sure that we're well situated in order to hit that growth and those milestones. Super long-term growth, we'll see. We want to make sure that we hit these milestones first, and for us, getting a product that is the best tasting alternative is kind of what we're really focused on right now.
So has the pandemic had, so I mean, this strategy of sort of, introducing things to the restaurants through via Horeca, has that strategy changed at all with the pandemic and less people sort of frequenting restaurants, or you're still sort of confident that given time that will be sort of a non-issue and people will go back to restaurants and patronize it that way and the go-to-market strategy is still valid?
What we're finding with restaurants is they're actually coming back. A lot of the restaurants are coming back online. There might be less capacity, but they're actually producing. So from that perspective, it's okay. What we're missing out is, we're missing some of the other channels. We're missing hotels that are really having a hard time coming back. We're missing universities. We're missing some of the institutional groups. We're missing cruise ships. That's some of the problems of going straight food service right now. So yes, we did pivot a bit. We pivoted more to look into manufacturing and those types of companies that can produce products that will be in retail. A little bit of that is just demand. The demand for retail products is so high right now that when we launch, we had so many people asking, where can we buy this? Where can we buy this? How can I get this at home? That we kind of had to go and say, okay, you know what? People are really interested in this. They want it at home. They might not be going to restaurants. Let's see if we can find some manufacturers that are willing to partner with us to start doing some manufacturing. So I think from our perspective, that's what we're really doing. We're going out, we're trying to find manufacturers that are interested as well. And then that is going to hopefully satisfy some of the retail demand. There'll be, consumer-ready products. There'll be products that are frozen. That will be really interesting to do that. But also what we want to do is we want to position ourselves so when everything does open back up, we'll be the ones there with the best meat alternative. It'll be a different texture than what we're used to with like a ground meat. That's what we've really seen more than anything else. So that market is being quite saturated with Beyond Meat, Impossible Foods, Light Life, kind of having the ground alternative. And so we're coming with a different texture alternative, something that the flavoring is excellent, the texture is great. So, that's where we want to be. We want to position ourselves when things open up. We'll be right there to service anybody that wants it.
Is the focus always sort of going to be, Japanese-inspired dishes and stuff, or are you looking to branch out into other types of cuisine?
Yeah, I mean, I think we will be looking to branch out eventually, especially kind of the Chinese market is huge. I think having a premium product in the Chinese market is really exciting. The value that we can bring in terms of the meat alternative there. So we will be looking at different alternatives. Different flavors. What we really want to do, though, with a very first kind of SKU is go and just put out what is the most common form for this type of product, most common flavor for this type of product, get people to try it in a traditional way to understand what we're trying to do. And then once we've kind of gone through that motion, go through launch other products, we could potentially be doing different flavors for different groups. But I don't want to go too far down that road because we haven't launched fully through this one. The expectation is that we will launch through this one, this first version, and then we're kind of in the development process for the next lines to roll out. Once we've kind of gone through the launch.
You essentially see Japan as being given the heritage associated with the product, you see the Japanese production as being the sort of the source of most of your manufacturing, right? You're not thinking of setting up a plant in Vancouver or anything like that.
For now, what we're doing is just focusing on the Japanese market. Yeah, for production. I mean, we're working with manufacturers that are headquartered in Japan. They have manufacturing plants in Japan. That's what we're looking to do. We're looking to just really hammer in on what makes this product so unique and so authentic, and that is using Japanese ingredients, being produced in Japan under kind of traditional elements, traditional cooking methods. And so for us, it is, focusing on that as much as we possibly can. Down the road, there might be alternatives that we end up looking at different manufacturing places. But that's down the road. We're not entertaining that right now. There's no plans to build a factory in Vancouver. No, that's not for us. For Top Tier Foods, we're best at creating, developing, marketing, branding. We want to work with the best manufacturers, the guys that have these, traditions of doing great products. And for this, it's in Japan.
No, that makes perfect sense. I was wondering, I mean, is there a market within Japan for your product? I mean, I'm not very familiar with how meat alternative products have caught on in Japan. You must be the first sort of plant-based company that I've heard of that is operating out of Japan. I may be wrong, but any thoughts on that, Blair?
So I mean, for us, Japan is this interesting place for us to launch a product. It is, obviously, this is a Japanese product. It's made in Japan. It's culturally significant, or we're talking about Wagyu. So we want to be very careful in how we approach Japan. We have actually several distributors that are now talking to us about marketing the product in Japan. We're actively kind of entertaining these offers. So something will happen in Japan. In terms of the plant-based, the market in Japan is slightly slower to incorporate these plant-based alternatives. They're slower to adapt a lot of kind of the Western themes. Gluten-free and environmentally conscious, health conscious product. Japanese food is in itself quite healthy. It has been for a long time, very clean, very simple. And so having somebody tell them that, what they're eating isn't necessarily, great because it could have gluten in it or something, they're quite happy being what they're eating. So we're not overly persistent on trying to make the Japanese market a core market of ours. What we were happy to do is work with the companies that are there existing, that have clientele relationships, and then we can piggyback off those relationships in any way that they see fit. But it's not a core market to us in terms of sales of Wagyu. We want this to be more of a market that is outside kind of North American and European. And the funny thing about that is we work with Chef Tojo very closely, and Chef Tojo is one of the kind of co-inventors of the California roll. He helped bring rice on the outside of the maki roll. So he understands what it is to create products that aren't necessarily adopted in Japan, but are worldwide, that have worldwide focus to them. And so for him, he thinks this is really cool. This isn't a product that necessarily will ever grow in Japan to the same place that Wagyu beef would, but it doesn't necessarily matter when a California roll is the most popular roll in the U.S., when an inside-out roll is more popular than a roll with seaweed on the outside. So, he understands that you can influence this cuisine outside of Japan, and the adoption of Japanese food globally is so wide, so pervasive in everything that, the Japanese market can be this singular market where they do things in a traditional way. They stick to these traditional elements, and that's fine. They're very happy being that way, and that's great. That will continue to drive traditional, keep the tradition there. For us, it's about servicing these markets that are, they're looking for the next thing. They're always trying to go on trend to the next, and then environmentally friendly, health conscious. So for us, that's where our focus is going to be.
Well, that's a really astute observation, because I think it's very telling. I guess it's thousands of years of cooking tradition and ingredients that are made in a particular way, right? So it's really hard to break that. But you're right. I mean, California roll is a great example. Inside Out roll is a great example. There's so many sort of sushi innovations that have happened outside of Japan that have sort of become standard globally, but it's probably slower to be adopted in Japan itself, where things remain quite traditional. Interesting. I think I grew up in Sri Lanka originally, and there when I grew up, beef was a very common sort of thing. Most people ate it, and in the last sort of 5-10 years, that's really fallen off of vogue, and people are not eating beef. They eat other things, chicken and everything else. And this could be something that the Buddhists in Sri Lanka could adopt very easily and eat without having to worry about the fact that they're eating beef. Where you won't have the Indian problem of trying to teach people, or like Kartika, to say, hey, this is how beef tastes like, and they were like, okay, if you tell me. But
interestingly, though, Lavi, you're forgetting, I think Sri Lanka, I don't know, as long as I've sort of been alive, we've always had soy meat.
Mm-hmm. So soy-based alternatives have been out there for quite a long time. I think what we're doing is we're just accentuating some of the differences and those elements that will make ours as uniquely familiar to somebody that eats a Wagyu beef, or the top level of beef. So that tenderness, that realism to beef. Soy beef has been actually around in China, in Sri Lanka, in India. I mean, there's been options available for a meat alternative for quite a while. I think what you saw with Beyond Meat was they just made it to a realism state, to a state which is so close to the original, and then they had an unstoppable marketing force behind it to really get everybody understanding that you don't need to have the animal involved to eat something that is exactly the same as a piece of meat. So I think for us, it is just trying to continue that. It's trying to recognize that what we have is different. Our differentiating factors are through the techniques that we use, through the very subtleties that we have in terms of making this as unique and as close to a Wagyu alternative as we possibly could.
Great. I mean, Blair, this has been a sort of a fascinating discussion on when I did eat beef, one of my favorite cuts of meat. So I've been sort of salivating for the fact that having not eaten it in a really long time, that maybe in time it will be generally available in North America, and there will be an opportunity to actually taste it. I must say that your website, from all of the sort of alternative protein websites I've been to, it's the most appetizing website I've been to. The food porn is amazing. So it does look delicious from the standpoint of what you've shown in the website. So I do recommend our viewers to go to Top Tier Foods and check out their website, because it does look amazingly beautifully prepared. And I can see why you're probably want to introduce this very sort of premium product, at least in the perception of many, in the proper way. And I think that's a really smart business strategy from your perspective. So Kartika, any sort of last questions? I'm cognizant of the time, so I don't want to exceed our 45-minute to an hour time frame. So any questions for Blair before we wrap up?
Just one final one, which I think we didn't actually focus on, probably the audience might be interested in understanding, is that Blair's company, Top Tier Foods, also has this Quinoa Cookie range, right? Which is sort of a almost pre-prepared, shelved, ready to consume, retail available sort of range of quinoa infused dishes, right?
Yeah, I mean, that was my original product line. So when I just started out, when I was 26, I think, I developed this range of quinoa side dishes, not really knowing anything about the food industry at that time. So this was me just really doing trial and error, and we've developed these over time. So there's been a few iterations of each one, and now we've got to a product where we're really happy. The interesting and quite unique thing about launching Waygu is just the amount of exposure that the company has gotten as a whole. This product, it does great in Western Canada, but never really grew outside of Western Canada. But now we're getting all these questions about it, and companies as far away as Australia are inquiring about if we would be selling quinoa cookies outside of Canada. So yeah, there's a lot of opportunity there. Although this is a product that I'm happy. It's just ticking away. It does its own thing. It's got an established clientele, which I love. It's just kind of a good little revenue generator. But our focus now is definitely going more away from just the quinoa and more into the meat alternatives. But I'm more than happy to kind of keep plugging away and talking about quinoa cookies because I love it. It was my first love. It was the first brand that I ever got involved in food with, and so I'm immensely proud of quinoa cookies and what we did with it when I was a bit younger. So, good.
Well, that was not too long ago. So thanks again, Blair, for sort of spending this time with us and telling us about Top Tier Foods and sort of your journey and how you sort of, smartly pivoted. And then obviously you've done a couple of pivots. And I think, we have a lot of entrepreneurs and startups that watch our show. And I think, whether it's food or tech or anything else for that matter, I think a hallmark of a good entrepreneur is to look at sort of where things take them and be opportunistic sometimes and pivot quickly instead of sort of being stuck in one groove, which, I think you're a great example of somebody who's done that. And I think based on the response you're getting for your Wagyu beef, it seems that maybe you found your sort of the holy grail of the market there in a very smart manner. And I think that's, we're going to keep watching you and seeing what happens in the space and wish you obviously all the success. I think this is a very great thing that you're doing. And as a vegan, I can't wait to sort of try all these alternatives. It's great to see this happening across the globe, and from BC, Canada, that's great to see.
Yeah, well, thank you very much. It's great. In BC, we've been lucky enough to have some of the best vegan alternative companies, from Dia Foods to Gardein to Eve's Veggie Cuisine. So a lot of great innovations come from here. So we're obviously well supported, so I'm hopeful that we can be kind of one of the next ones to come out of BC to do something good. But I really appreciate the time. Hopefully we can get some product over to Sri Lanka, over to India soon. And then
Definitely.
we'll do an online tasting. So we can try it all.
It's amazing. People don't realize the disruption to global supply chains. I had something couriered to me from Sri Lanka recently, and it went from Colombo to Dubai, from Dubai to Charles de Gaulle, Paris, and then to Delhi.
Okay.
I had frequent flyer miles on DHL.
That won't do very well for my frozen product, but we'll figure out a way to get it there sometime.
All right, Blair. Thanks so much for spending the time. Have a great weekend, and we'll keep in touch.
Appreciate it very much. Thank you very much. Yeah, thank you.
Thanks, guys. Bye.
Bye-bye.